So our next panel is the road to innovation success, and I'm super excited that we have three awesome panelists who are going to tell us stories both in terms of successes and challenges that they've encountered as they've crafted their own professional journeys. So my name is Julie Clugage. I'm executive director and co-founder of a nonprofit social enterprise called Team for Tech that works to advance learning outcomes through technology integration. And to my left, we have Madhura Belani, who's Chief Product Officer at Danal. And then next is Shanthi Iyer, who's Vice President of Information Technology at Cisco. And finally, you met Julie Castro Abrams, who's an angel investor, has helped thousands of women start businesses, and serves on multiple boards of directors. So I think we're just going to dive right in with some questions. I'm going to let each person share a little bit about their journey and then talk about some thematic issues. So Shanthi, let's start with you.
Right.
You have had a fascinating journey, starting from database administrator to vice president of IT at Cisco. As we chatted ahead of time, you shared some of the tough lessons that you learned as you moved from individual contributor into management. So just tell us a little bit about your journey and what some of those challenges were and how you addressed them.
Hi everybody, good afternoon. I know I have a deep throat, so I gotta like keep this a little away from me. So yeah, I joined Cisco about 18 years ago, and I started as an entry-level database administrator. My world was full of Oracle and Oracle ERP environments. And I was not one of those people that actually had a strong career plan in mind. I was a techie, but that's about it, yeah. And my boss, I think at that time said, hey Shanthi, you should just, he was moving to another role, so he said, hey, you should run my job because you're already ordering everybody around. I'm like, okay. But then the first year was very difficult for me. I probably sucked as a manager. I was not good. I was not prepared. My team probably hated me because I would do their work before they got to it. Because I was a techie. My job was, oh, somebody sent an email, I got to fix it. And I really did not know true leadership. And leadership is when you serve your team. And it came to me a lot later. It came to me through a lot of coaching. I had like great advocates. I love Cisco for that because I actually have to thank a lot of leaders at Cisco who basically at different points in my career came and told me, if you continue to act this way, you're going to flush your career down the toilet. Shanthi, you need to tone it down here. And Shanthi, no, you got to be more aggressive. So you'll hear conflicting messages. And really the key is how do you find that balance where it's okay to challenge somebody and you really need to hold back and let others talk and be a good listener. I think that was for me the biggest lesson.
You talked a lot about learning patience and how it wasn't just about charging forward and then turning around and wait, nobody's behind me.
Yeah.
What did you do to kind of cultivate that and make sure everybody was following you?
Yeah, those were some of the painful lessons. I'm not sure if I should actually share here. I see some familiar faces from Cisco here. So don't use it against me when you meet me there. I think it started from just basic listening, right? I'm one of those people that like to, when I have an opinion, I'd like to state it, and then it was my opinion. So to the point that I would probably not be a good listener to any other opinions in the room. I was a frequent interrupter of their conversations. So learning to be patient was the first thing I really, truly, literally learned was in meetings. Somebody coached me, Shanthi, don't say a word until you raise your hand and somebody gives you permission. My God, that was tough for me. I'm not wired that way. I was more wired to speak, and because my tone is so strong, when I started speaking, everybody shut up. So I was like, okay, I like it. But it took me a long time to learn to put my hand up. So I would literally practice in the room in my staff meetings. I'm like, I'll raise my hand, they'll give me permission, then I speak. So it started like very basic like that. But I tell people that kind of practice helps. You change, you actually become a better person.
So the people who were working for you would then call on you to speak in your own staff meeting.
That's right.
I love it. Okay, that's awesome. Great. So Madhura, you've also grown up through many different roles, both on the engineering side and then on the business side. So can you share a little bit about the keys to success for you, and then also what some of the challenges have been?
Sure. So just to give you a background, right, very similar to Shanthi, I started in the technology space, had an engineering undergrad, worked as an engineer, software engineer for 8 years. And towards the end of my, end of the engineering career, I was exposed to a lot of external facing, client-facing meetings where I was working with the clients, prospective clients, building solutions for them. And that's how I got exposed to the whole product management aspect of it. And I said, I love what I'm doing in the engineering side, but my true passion is on the non-technical business side of things. So I started doing NYU evening courses, but still that wasn't enough. And then I said, I'm going to cut the cord, I'm going to go get an MBA, and I'm going to make a clean transition on the business side. So I went and got an MBA from Duke. After Duke, I joined PayPal as a senior product manager. So that was my first transition from the engineering side to the product management. The second transition that I did was, so I've been doing product management for about 10 years, I now have a GM responsibility where I have P&L and revenue goals. So that transition was also very interesting. So some of the aspects that helped me make that transition were doing the role, getting exposed to the responsibility or that you want in the new role that you're looking for. So before getting the actual title of a product manager or now as a GM, I was actually already doing the role that those, or the responsibility that those roles needed. So that's something that really helped for me. The second aspect that helped me succeed in these transitions were the network. Anytime you're making a transition to a new role, you're trying to find a foothold, figuring out, how do I do sales, how do I do business models, how do I negotiate. You need to have a network of experts who can help you guide through that process. The other aspect I would emphasize is during the transitions, don't try to transition the domain as well as the functional role. When I was making those transitions to different functional roles, I was either keeping the same domain or I changed the functional, I changed the domains but kept the same functional roles. So those are some of the aspects that, worked for me as I was transitioning different roles.
Great, thank you. No, that's very practical advice. Great. So Julie, you have done so much to help women entrepreneurs and help women grow into business leadership roles. I would love for you to share both your own fascinating journey and then what you've learned along the way. Talk about domain and function, what you've learned about how women lead and what are some of the best practices for promoting women.
Sure, thank you, Julie. And thanks everyone for being here on a Friday afternoon. All right, I'm going to give you 5 things that I want you to see if you can relate to, or some tips, and then I'm going to tell you some stories around them. Okay, so 1, grit trumps excellence. Raise the bar high, so high you feel nauseous. 3, raise your profile over and over again. 4, network and leverage your network. And 5, make a power play. Okay? All right. So grit trumps excellence. I ran a microenterprise and microfinance organization for 11 years. And we worked with low-income women, half of them in Spanish. Okay? Tens of thousands of women. And you know what we found is the women who had the best business plans and the most support did not succeed like the women who had the down and dirty business plan, and they were going to and literally they had no safety net. So if they had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and borrow someone's truck, they were going to figure it out. If their business started to really struggle, they would innovate and create a new business strategy because they couldn't just go get another job and sustain their family or whatever they needed. So grit, it just means like, are you hungry and are you really going to put everything into it? all right? Raise the bar so high you feel like you're going to throw up. Anyone ever do that? Raise your hand if you do that a little bit. You know what's kind of interesting? I think the people who said they were on corporate boards just raised their hands. I'm not kidding. I think that that's what I just saw. So this is the thing. I just negotiated a contract recently, and they tried to make it contingent. They're like, oh, the lawyer marked it up, and you know, they changed it and they made it contingent. I had to like steel myself and say, yeah, I'll agree to everything, but I'm not going to do a contingent project for you here. I'm not going to do it, and here are the reasons. That was it. I didn't say, oh, you la la la, you know, all those things we do afterwards, right? I just said, these are 3 reasons, done. He's like, that makes sense, you're right. And I was like, okay. Like, that's just an example of like that, you know, pull it up and say, no, here's the bar. And it doesn't always work out, but you know what, when you lower the bar, you regret it. And that's what happens to women where we aren't, you know, our lifetime earnings stay, you know, $1 million or more less than men. Okay, raise your profile. How many of you have spoken at something like this, some kind of a conference, at least once in the last month? Oh my God, still the corporate board people. All right. Please put that down, just write it down. Goal number 1, and the next month I'm gonna speak somewhere. I'm gonna speak in a public place, and you know how you do it? You literally show up. You talk to the people who are planning this conference. You say, I would love to see a track that looks like this. You know what? I'll even get 3 other panelists to join me, and it's gonna be fantastic. Hold the bar high and stand up and say, I have something to say. All right? And of course, it doesn't hurt to try and get, you know, and maybe you need, a lot of us need our friends. Like, we need a little personal board of directors to say, all right, come on, I'm gonna get you in the Huffington Post this week. You know, you just did this great.
I want to be.
All right, good. All right, so, but you know, seriously, enlisting other people. So I have a mastermind group every Friday morning with 4 other badass women. Sometimes I'm like, Jesus, my kid just graduated from college. I'm trying to figure out like what to do with him. But most of the time, I'm saying, and they know me well enough. We've been on this, in this mastermind group. Nobody pays any money. We're just committed to each other and to show up. And they'll be like, you know what? You've now said this 3 times. Why is this continually coming back? People who can see you, challenge you, and help you, you know, have the guts to go out there and raise your profile. All right, network and leverage your network. How many of you have over 1,000 LinkedIn contacts? Awesome. How many of you have over 5,000? The corporate board people, I think. All right. There are 5,000 people at this conference, and not that many of you said you got at least 10 cards. Okay. So tomorrow, every person you got a card for, everyone you met, me included, you ask us to LinkedIn. And it's our choice. But you know what? You will be stunned how many people say, yeah, you know, I want to connect with you, and then the next time I need to hire someone or I'm looking for someone to speak at a conference, I can look you up. All right. Make a power play. So sometimes that means entering a whole new arena and saying, you know what, of course I can do it. You know, I would like to put my name in for that board seat. Maybe, you know, for one of the things I did a couple years ago is I was like, I want to invest. It'll raise my profile. I can put $25,000 aside and just invest in someone's company. And you know what? That sort of power play has been tremendously powerful for me and my own trajectory. All right.
Great. Well, thank you. I hope everybody wrote those down. I did, 1 through 5 here. So let's open it up. I mean, I would love to hear from you guys, kind of building off of those 5 ideas or your own. What have people done for you? Shanthi, you shared a couple examples, you know, to help you move up into leadership. What have you done for other women? And do you see any differences between, you know, when you were just starting and then women today?
Yes, absolutely. I think there are a lot more formal programs in place in many companies. Like if I take an example like Cisco, for even every age band of, say, which decade you belong to. There are a lot of courses training people in a different way. And for every grade groups, we actually take women and we send them through what we call a jump program, where women get exposure to other women and really have somebody not just be your mentor, but be your advocate. For me, that there's a big difference between the two. Mentor is somebody who can just come and give you an advice and just say, hey, follow this and do it like this and do it like that and walk away. Advocate is somebody who takes you developing as their goal. That's what happened to me. If people had not helped, supported, nominated me for roles, which the first time I got the current role I'm running, I actually told my boss's boss, this is not going to work for me. I'm not going to be good at this. And why are you taking me away from my current job? I'm doing so well. And she said, this is going to be a game changer for you. And my God, it's been a game changer for me. So you need somebody in your workplace, in your circle of friends, that actually advocates for you. So that means I personally take it my responsibility to grow women in Cisco. I pick 7 or 8 people and I'm like, okay, it's my job to find them new jobs. It's my job to get them promoted. None of them actually work for me, but that's my role. I think that changes the game. We call it the multiplier effect, because if every one of us tried to do that for at least 1 or 2 other people, imagine the impact we can make. It's not just say, hey, let me have a one-on-one, give you some advice and walk away. It has a very new meaning, I feel, to advocacy.
Yeah, I love that. How did you pick those women, or did they pick you?
Some of them, I think they picked me. Some of them I connected because I have a particular personality. I usually look for women that have a hard time doing things that I do, and then they have something that I'm really terrible at, like listening. So I pick people that are better listeners, but then they can learn how to speak up from me, you know, and that has helped.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Madhura, how about you?
So adding on to that, right? So I've worked at startups, I've worked at larger companies as well. So, something that has worked for me is, reaching out to senior exec women at, large companies, right? You'd be amazed at how open they are to, just having a casual. It doesn't have to be a formal, mentorship program. You just show genuine interest in what they do, whatever expertise they have, right? If they, on those lines, I reached out to the president of Discover. I have lunch with her once a year, and she's very open about, coaching me. There's no formal program, but then she's willing to give back, and, she went, I feel like the kind of struggle some of these women went through, there's nothing like what we, it's nothing, what we are going through is very small compared to what they went through. So it's very, very energizing, very inspiring, and they're there to help us. Mm-hmm. All we have to do is just make an attempt, and then don't be discouraged if you don't hear back from them. Reach out to 10 people, try twice, thrice. You'll definitely hear from someone.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I definitely want to kind of wrap it up. I think we have 5 minutes left with your single greatest piece of advice, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit, and basically what has been led to your greatest success, and then what is one thing, if you could do it over again, you would avoid.
Julie, you want to go first?
Sure. Oh God, that's a long list. I think asking for help was probably the biggest issue. I love what you guys just said. There's a woman, her name's Mary Stutz, and she wrote a book called The Missing Mentor. And what she found, how many women in here actually have a woman who mentors them? Oh, good. You guys are doing pretty well. It's actually, maybe you think times are changing. And how many of you have a sponsor? That's another name for what you were talking about. How many of you have a sponsor actively? So I guess finding people who will actively, and asking them, saying, building a relationship with them and coming to them with very specific requests for sponsorship and mentoring. I didn't ask for help. It was hard. It's hard for a lot of us to do that.
Thanks.
Your first question was what made you successful? What
led to your greatest success? Like, what's your main takeaway from that? And then what was something that you wish you hadn't done?
I think this is my personal opinion. I don't know if you ask people that know me well would agree with this, but for me it was about being self-aware. There was a point in time when I was comfortable. When being self-aware means you have to be comfortable about who you are, and not try to please everybody else, and not try to do what others want you to do, and actually feel confident about certain things that others may find as a fault, and figure out how to leverage that as a strength. Because usually when people talk to you, they focus more on what you don't do well, and it's your job to know your strengths and put it out there and let it be there for people to leverage. So for me, that being self-aware of what I was really good at changed. Now when people tell me, hey, you're being candid, you're being direct, okay, that's my brand.
I love it. Yeah, your brand.
There was a time I was defending it a lot, and it makes a difference, I think.
Yeah, self-aware and true to yourself.
Being true to yourself.
Yeah, I like it. So even as you were kind of learning patience, I think you stayed true to yourself, and you're like, this is the kind of leader that I'm going to be. Yeah, I love that.
So sort of my advice would be, don't be afraid to fail, right? I think very similar to what Anne was saying. Build a thick skin. If you're going to go to a new role, of course you're not going to be an expert, right? It's okay to fail, right? Of course you have a champion. You don't want to say the wrong things in a board meeting. You of course want to be prepared, but have a safe environment where it's okay to be wrong. And you then flex, you build that muscle in your brain where you build that confidence. Where you say, I'm not an expert in that, but I'm going to speak up. I'm going to say what comes to my mind, and you strengthen that muscle to speak on your feet. You don't have to go through 10 hours of preparation to be able to speak up. You're confident that, okay, I can think on the fly. I can, craft my ideas on the fly. Other tactical advice I would give is, find a role where you get to interact with clients, with partners. That's external facing. Often even in engineering or in product management, you could be very internal focused, where you're working with your internal teams. You're doing your daily stuff, and you don't get as much exposure to meeting different, folks from different companies, different responsibilities. So something that worked really well for me was when I took a role where I was working with new vendors, new suppliers, and that helped me craft the message, right? Find out synergies and help me on the BD side, but also help me expand my network.
Great. That's great. It kind of almost reminds me of like strength training, what you're talking about. Like you build your tolerance for taking that risk. Like I feel like in my own startup journey, I mean, the things that kept me up 5 years ago, like do not even worry me today. And you just kind of gradually learn how to deal with those things. That's awesome. Well, I think we are almost out of time, but I want to give you guys one last chance. Any other pearls of wisdom or, just advice you would share?
I would just love to encourage you. A lot of us have fears, and you got your own set of limitations today, money, positional, whatever. But on a regular basis, take the time to step into the future and say, 5 years down the road, I'm going to give myself permission to have succeeded in every possible way, and write it down. Write down what it feels like, who is around you, what is the headline when Julie introduces you at a conference like this, what does she say about you? Give yourself permission to actually go there regularly and think, what did I have to do differently to get there? It is magical when you do that in a disciplined way on a regular basis, and sometimes you need to enlist a friend to do that with you, so you can think big and get there.
I love that visioning exercise. Yeah, that's great.
For me, it would be, aim for something where it makes you uncomfortable. A little uncomfortable is the right place to be.
Not vomiting.
Yeah, I was almost thinking, should I say, nauseous? For some people, nausea could be what happens when you take a new role, most of us, I think, hold back because we think we are not worthy enough to get that job. I was in that boat. I probably am still in that boat. And it's okay, we'll learn. I'm going to get better.
That's great.
I would say raise your hand. Don't wait to be discovered. Don't wait to be appointed for that new role. Raise your hand, right? Build a case. Do your homework. Say, I've done XYZ that correlates to what I want. There's an opening over there. I would like to be considered.
Great. Well, on that raising hand note, let's give a hand to our panelists. Thank you so much.